Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 2, session 2 of our Show Me the Money series. I am Carmen Rojas here with some of my very special friends and guest co-host, Miss Stephanie Sims. Stephanie, say hi. You're muted. There you go.
Hello, how are you? It's great to be here, Carmen. I'm really excited about today's discussion.
Great. And today's discussion, we are going to be talking about crowdfunding. This whole series is dedicated to entrepreneurs and how do we get money. I know one of the things as an entrepreneur myself and having worked with other entrepreneurs, we're kind of in a constant search for money. And so understanding where the money is, how do you get it, how do you keep it, is the goal of this 4-part series. Last week, if you missed it, that episode was all about personal finance and budgeting and getting your own ducks in a row so that when you do find money, you're in a position to use it well. So we'll make sure and post a link to last week's show. This week, of course, we're talking about crowdfunding. Next week, we're going to be talking about debt and credit. They tend to be kind of the ugly words in entrepreneurship, but I honestly couldn't tell you anybody that's made it without using it to some extent or another. So we will be talking about that next week. But let's talk about today's topic because I have 2 very special guests who have joined me, and you will notice that they are not Ryan. He will join us another time. But first up, just because they're in the order I see them, is Miss Gail Harris, who is a very accomplished author and has experience with crowdfunding, and I'll let her introduce herself a little deeper. Go ahead, Gail.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carmen. I'm Gail Harris. It's really great to be on this show. I actually did a Kickstarter.com campaign to fund my publicity campaign for my forthcoming book, and this is a really great opportunity to be able to talk all about that. So thank you.
No problem. And our other expert joining us is Chris LaBonty, who is a co-founder of Headfunder, which is I would say it's probably one of the newer crowdfunding sites, and I'll let Chris talk a little bit about himself and Headfunder. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm the co-founder of Headfunder. Headfunder is a new and innovative crowdfunding platform. We just launched a few months ago. And thank you very much for having me on your show, Carmen.
No problem. So let's get started talking about crowdfunding. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question there. And let's just explain to the audience what crowdfunding is. And I want to make sure that we're real clear about what it is, what it isn't, so that we can dispel any myths out there about crowdfunding. And I'll let Chris start first, and then we'll pass on to Gail. So go ahead, Chris.
All right, so crowdfunding, what it is, it's, for so long there was so many traditional ways to get financing, a bank, an investor, a loan. But now with the power of the internet, crowds can come together and pitch in little amounts of money to make up a large whole sum of money, and it's called crowdfunding, and it's bringing the crowds together to make stuff happen and fund business ventures and fund what matters most to people.
And
Well, go ahead, Carmen.
I was going to ask Gail, how would you define crowdfunding, just to kind of add to it from the entrepreneur's perspective?
Well, I do want to say that I am not a financial expert at all. Excuse me. And the reason why we chose Kickstarter, it was actually it was my co-author and I, because I co-wrote this book with somebody else. And we had heard of Kickstarter, and then we had heard of another company. I don't even remember what it was, but we ended up going with Kickstarter because it just seemed really good. It just kind of used my gut on that, and we used it because we wanted to see if we could raise money for a publicity campaign, and that's basically all I could tell you.
So just a question, Chris, for somebody who's looking at a new business. They're just starting out, or maybe they've been in business for a while, but they have some cash needs. Is every single thing we might need to fund in our business a good candidate for crowdfunding, or are there just specific projects or products, or like Gail, works of that are going to be published that are appropriate for crowdfunding?
Yeah, I think there's definitely more things, you know, in times in your business where crowdfunding is more appropriate than others. You know, I do believe that you can crowdfund, you know, about anything. But, you know, the chances of you having success and you having a much better campaign, you know, come in critical points of your business duration, you know. So it is important to crowdfund the right things at the right time, you know. Because you can only do so much campaigns with keep all those same supporters, you know. You don't want to do necessarily the wrong campaign for something and lose your current supporters, you know.
So give me some examples, if you would, of what, in your opinion, are good things to crowdfund for, and maybe what are not such good things. Understandably, that you can crowdfund for anything, but you know, if I wanted to redecorate my office, could I crowdfund for that? You know, if I wanted to, you know, I would assume there's a difference between doing that and maybe some new software or some new offering that I want to put out there, but I have to go out and get like some really cool coder or something like that to make that work.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have a much like bigger campaign, you know, with some new software or something, you know, that's gonna be a really big campaign, like, you know, versus crowdfunding some office supplies. But you know, we actually do it. Like this banner right here was crowdfunded on our site. So we actually crowdfund, you know, the stuff we buy for our office, just because, you know, it's just a fun way for everybody who works with us to come together, you know, and fun little things. But yeah, so like you could fund something small like that, but I wouldn't, you know, necessarily go bring out your whole crowd. I would wait for something, you know, bigger, like a bigger project, like the software project. And that's when I would, you know, reach out to all your current customers, you know, your friends, your family, all of that.
So Chris, as we're talking about, you know, reaching out to our fans or supporters, is it important? A lot of people have heard that crowdfunding is a great way to develop a fan base. But I've also heard the opposite. I've also heard that it's hard to be successful in crowdfunding if you don't already have a pretty decent group of supporters. So, which is true there?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you're going to do a crowdfunding campaign and it's going to be, you know, business oriented, and it's a rather bigger campaign, you don't want to go into it with no supporters. Like sometimes it does happen. Sometimes you will see crowdfunding campaigns that don't go in with much support, but the idea is just so amazing and it gets picked up by the press and it snowballs, and next thing you know, they have tons of supporters. But the average campaign, it's very, very smart to plan it out months ahead. Have a huge supporter group, you know, that will support you. Get all your main supporters to really agree to back you like the first 24 hours. Especially on a larger campaign, you don't even want to be promoting that campaign until you have some funds in there. You know, it's going to be a big campaign, and it's just the whole like psychological effect of seeing the progress bar, like not at 0%. When you see it like going up, you know, 10-20%, you're more willing to donate. You're more willing to be part of the campaign. It's getting those first few supporters, which is the hardest part. So that's why it's so great to have a group of supporters behind you before you start. So that way, right when you start, you know, boom, you're already at like 10-20%, you know, within the first 24-48 hours. So that's why it's so important, because nothing attracts a crowd more than a crowd. So if you can bring a crowd right in the beginning, you know, you're probably set. There's a good chance your campaign will be successful.
Okay, I like that. The best way to attract a crowd is a crowd. Okay, that's good. That's good. So Gail, when you guys decided to launch your Kickstarter campaign, did you already have a lot of people? Did you reach out just to your personal networks? You know, how did you figure out who was going to support you and how to get in touch with them?
Well, we knew that I actually did not have a very big network at that time, and Brandy, my co-author, we didn't have huge networks, so we knew that we were going to be appealing to our family and our friends and our colleagues and their friends and colleagues. I mean, this was we knew this was not a Seth Godin operation here. We basically wanted to raise $30,000 because we wanted to hire a certain publicist that we wanted to work with. So I was not even on Twitter at that point or Google+, so I had an email list, and I had, I was on Facebook, so basically I got my letter ready, and I mean, we figured that we would be able to do this, I mean, we weren't really sure, but we had been working on this project for a long time, and we had supporters. I mean, people just, it's really, it was our family and friends and colleagues, but they just really loved this project, and they believed in us, and they wanted to support us. So, I can't give you the experience of, trying to launch a big business and, what Chris was speaking to before. This was really, we wanted to raise $30,000, and we were going to ask everybody we knew to help us, and that's what we did. And there were some people that pledged to us that we didn't know who they were. They were friends of friends, but by and large, we knew pretty much everybody who donated with us. And they cared. In our particular case, they cared about the book, and they cared about the project. So we were successful because of that.
That's it.
Does that answer the question, Stephanie?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And Carmen, did you have something you wanted to follow up with?
Just a question. Now, I know you said it was $30,000, so that's not pocket change to anybody.
Right.
But there are obviously other options for how you could come up with $30,000. You could have, went out and got a bunch of credit cards. That is an option. I'm not recommending it, but I'm just saying it's an option. You could have got a loan. You could have, I don't know if you have equity in your home, or I mean, there's a lot, there's lots of different ways that you could have come up with $30,000. What made you decide that crowdfunding was the best way for you guys to do that?
I know, it just seemed the right thing to do. I remember I just was reading an article about it in the New York Times. It just kept on showing up, crowdfunding. And honestly, we didn't really think about taking out loans or doing anything else. This just presented itself to us, and it just seemed like a really good idea. It seemed to make sense. It seemed like fun and exciting. It seemed like a good way to build momentum and actually promote the book while we were trying to raise money for publicity. It just seemed like the right thing to do.
So did you spend, it sounds like maybe you didn't spend a ton of time investigating your different options either.
No, we didn't.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. But I don't know, Chris, maybe is that one of the keys to success in a crowdfunding campaign is you don't spend a ton of time trying to pre-plan and do all this stuff before. You just kind of get in there with your enthusiasm, and that's what attracts people?
I think it works sometimes, but I think the majority of the time planning it out is definitely the best way to go.
I think for our particular situation, it worked out, and I don't want to say we were lucky. I think we really strategized and planned this well, but if I was trying to finance a business, believe me, I would have spent a little more time researching my options. So.
Well, and the reason I asked the question is because I think and I haven't done a crowdfunding campaign myself, although I've considered it, one of the pieces that you have to have is that enthusiasm, right? And a way to generate this connection either with the project, in your case the book, Gail, or with a product. It kind of comes back to what we said before, Chris, right? You probably don't want to finance office supplies because it's a lot harder for people to have some kind of emotional connection with office supplies as opposed to having a connection with for example, with a product that's going to change people's lives. Yeah. I don't know. Could you give us some more info on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Big project is definitely the way to go if you're looking to crowdfund. But I'm a big believer that you can crowdfund small stuff too. With just a few friends. I feel like there's a huge misconception that crowdfunding is just for big ideas, big projects. I think you can crowdfund bite-sized things and small things as well.
Well, and I have a question, Stephanie, and I don't know, maybe more for you, but certainly feel free to jump in, Chris and Gil. Would it work as like a part of your strategy? You know what I mean? If you've got, say you needed, you're an entrepreneur, you're starting up something, a business, and you know you need $100,000 or whatever to do what you want to do. So would it work to say, okay, maybe we're going to get $20,000 from crowdfunding, and then we can get another chunk of money from another source, so that it becomes, you know, you're diversifying your stream to get the total money that you need. And obviously, as Chris says, you can crowdfund for small amounts or big amounts. But you know, I'm just wondering, as an option in the tool set, would it work?
Well, I think it's something that you definitely have to consider. I think what I'm hearing and what I've kind of always thought about crowdfunding is it needs to be for something very specific, right? Because you're trying to, what you're really trying to do is rally people around this cause and or project that you're trying to create. And so if you don't have something that people can easily identify, I think it's going to be hard for it to be successful. The concern that I have is that because, and this is a question I want to ask both Chris and Gail, because of the timeline, because of how long it might take you to raise the money, I don't think you could count on it as 100% of the financing, since you don't control the timing. Now, in any financing situation, you never control 100% the timing, but you know, with a credit card, for example, once you know that you have something available on your limit, well, you can spend that money today. Maybe Chris, could you tell us a little bit about how long the average campaign lasts? And then Gail, I'd love to hear kind of what you guys thought how long you thought it would take you to raise the money, and then how long it actually took you.
Sure. Oh, should I go first?
Maybe we can hear from Chris first.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think the average campaign is around 30 to 40 days, you know, for bigger business stuff. I think that's a good time. I think you can do it longer. Just the issue is a lot of people don't really understand how much work it can be. And, you know, you have to keep that momentum going throughout the duration of your campaign. So I think, like, you know, anywhere from like 30 to 60 days for a bigger project is, like, you know, key timing.
Okay, and when you say that it's a lot of work, is it something that you have to actually watch every day? Is that why it's a lot of work, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be looking at your campaign every single day. You know, you need to be promoting it, marketing it, trying to get press, meeting new people, you know, working on a better prototype literally pretty much every day. You know, and it's not a sprint, you know, it's a marathon, and it is a lot of hard work. But at the same time, it's very, very rewarding, you know, if you raise a ton of funds and you don't have to give up any equity of your company, you know. You know, it's a very rewarding experience, so it's definitely worth it. But it isn't easy, and it does take quite a bit of work.
Okay. And so, Gail, when you guys did your campaign, how long did you think it would take, and how long did it actually take?
Sure. Well, actually, with Kickstarter.com, they gave you a choice. You could the duration of your campaign could be either 1 month or 2 months, and they recommended 1 month, and we did end up going with that. I mean, part of it seemed like it would be nice because if you had more time, you could, you know, earn more pledges, but it doesn't really seem to work that way. It seemed like having that shorter amount of time and sort of having that pressure on, you know, sort of like got people to take action more quickly. So ours, you know, it took us, we did that month long when the campaign was actually live, but we actually, you know, we decided to do this in March. It was actually March of 2013. So we started working on it 2013, and then the project actually went live, in May. So it took about a month and a half for us to get everything all together. You know, obviously you have to create videos. You know, that's the best way to get your appeal out. And with us, it took a little bit longer. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but my co-author is deaf, actually. So when we created our videos, we had a sign language interpreter involved. So after I created my after I created my video, I had a sign language interpreter up in the corner, you know, signing what I said, and then Brandy, my co-author, who is deaf, she actually signed her video, and then she had a voiceover, somebody speaking, so that hearing people will understand what she said. So that took a little bit long. But, you know, the clock doesn't start ticking until all that initial work is done. You have to get everything ready beforehand, you know, so you got your videos done, and then I had to create content for the actual Kickstarter page where people would come and read a description of the project and see if they wanted to, you know, invest in it, make a pledge. And so I had to write all that, and that's what, yeah, that happened. But actually, was that before March? You know, I can't remember. It was a 3 or 4 month period, but that had to get done. Then you have to set up your whole reward structure. You know, come up with what levels of rewards are you going to recommend people pledge. Like what seemed to work for us, we did a $10 pledge, $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, and $5,000. And so once you come up with those levels, then you have to figure out what kind of rewards you're going to offer. Obviously, the more the person pledges, the larger amount the reward would be. So we got that, how to work that out, and you know, basically I just looked at what other people did and you know, got that going. And I remember at one, you know, Kickstarter has to approve of everything, so you have to make sure everything works. I remember I had come up with what I thought was a really great idea for one of the pledges. If somebody donated a certain amount of money, that Brandy and I would donate a certain amount of money to a deaf school. I thought it was great, but they didn't buy that. They didn't. I think it has to be a concrete thing, like what you were saying before. A project has to be concrete. This is a book. It's like you can hold it in your hand. It's going to be launched on a certain date. It's a finite thing, and I think they wanted, you know, it has to be a tangible thing. Like you can't create a Kickstarter.com fund because you want people to donate money because you want to go to art school. I mean, it has to be like a concrete thing that you could hold in your hands. So we got all that done. You know, then you determine the length. You know, how much you want to set your goal toward, and then you have to get your lists ready, how you want to get it all out. And you don't want your campaign to go live until you have that all in shape. So again, like I was saying, we didn't have huge followings, but we really believed it. I mean, I think for us it was really more our motivation and our just like devotion to this project and the book, and people who were supporting us. You know, it was personal for us. It was really personal. So when I did that email blast and I did that initial Facebook post, I mean, you want to time that. So boom, as soon as your page goes live, I press send. You know, and then the month was on. You know, and then the race was on.
And so that's, yeah, it's interesting because, Chris, I don't know, do you have, with the campaigns that you've seen that have been run on Headfunder or elsewhere, is there some kind of conclusion we can draw, like people who take the time to really prepare their campaign, people who have a good following, you know, are there keys to success that we can say, here's the pieces you need to be successful at crowdfunding?
I'll share what I think a few of the major ingredients to a successful campaign are. I think the most important probably is the video, doing a really good video, because it just, you know, it's so personal, a video versus like a picture, and also just a good video is like one that is so awesome that makes you want to go share it with your friends, you know, on social media. You know, so a good video can really get you that publicity you need. Another major ingredient to success is rewards, good rewards. You know, you have to be creative with your rewards, and you definitely want to, you know, make the rewards all about your product, because that's why they're supporting you, is because of what you're doing. You know, like sometimes I'll see rewards as like a gift card for something, and you know, that doesn't show like really any creativity, and it's not about your product. So it's really focusing on your product, because that's what they want to support, and it's being creative at the same time. Like you can spend little on a reward, you know, that's, you know, it's more than money, because you know, maybe it's, they get a Skype call with the, the author, or they get to, there's so many different things that you can, make really awesome rewards. Another thing is the description. It's very important to do a good description. Adding images and infographics and, lots of visual elements to your campaign description help a lot. Especially nowadays, a lot of people don't really like to read. They want to really just see the video, see the campaign description, see the images, and and look at the rewards. They don't want to read just this huge thing. Some people do, but the average person is more visual nowadays. So it's very important to include both in your description. Another major thing for a successful campaign, I think, is preparing it and having amount of supporters. I think setting a realistic goal is really important. And setting something that will get you to where you need to be. If you can start your new idea with $20,000, then you should do $20,000 as your goal, and you could always go way over. There's no point of making your goal higher in case you may not hit it, when you could have started with that certain amount. So the goal amount is very important as well. I think having social media followings is very important, as a lot of crowdfunding gets shared and gets passed around on social media specifically. I think another very important thing, especially for larger campaigns and cool ideas and stuff, is to try to get press coverage. Press can really give you that boost you need and definitely get your campaign into different areas and demographics that it wouldn't have been just with your inner circle and friends of friends. So it could definitely spread it to new demographics. So I think those are some of the most important things to crowdfunding.
I actually have a question for Chris. I know with Kickstarter.com that when you set your goal, it was all or bust. Like, for example, we said our goal was $30,000. If we didn't make that goal, we wouldn't see a cent. Are they all like that, or does that
different platforms are definitely different. I think it's important to give options. So Headfunder allows you to do an all or nothing campaign at a 2% fee. And then we also give the option to do a flexible campaign, which would mean that you get the funds no matter what. And that's a 4% fee. I believe that for bigger projects and bigger business stuff, all or nothing is better. I personally, and I feel a lot of people feel the same way, it's a lot less risk on the actual contributor when your campaign is big and it's all or nothing. Someone may be raising $50,000 for something, but they may not even be able to get started unless they hit that 30,000, 40,000 mark. So if they end up with 10, 20,000, it's kind of like it's a risk. It may not happen. But other things like maybe some personal like medical needs or something like that would be better to do a flexible campaign. So I think it really depends on your campaign, but I personally recommend all or nothing pricing for big business ideas, because you'll get a lot more donations because people will feel like they're taking less of a risk.
Less of a risk for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Like crowdfunding, like things can go wrong, especially if you don't end up with all the funds. So you have to be careful to who you donate, to who you back. That's why an all or nothing campaign is just so much better for big ideas, because people feel like if this person gets all the funds, it's probably going to happen. There's a very good shot. But if they don't get all the funds, they just get partial. They may have to refund the money. It could just turn into like a disaster. So that's why I recommend all or nothing for bigger campaigns.
Yeah, that worked well for us actually.
Does it also help with the urgency factor? Does that, as your campaign goes on, if you say we have to hit our target or we don't get any investment, does that actually play better maybe with the supporters than if you're just saying, well, you know, we'll take whatever we get, it's not a big deal?
Yeah, I don't think it creates urgency as much as it creates more of like a fun factor, you know, like, oh, I'll back it, you know, like, can he make it, you know, can she make it, you know, it's like, and sometimes you're willing to contribute more because you're like, you know, it's all or nothing, you know, so it's like, it's definitely, it definitely just has this like different like feel to it when it's an all or nothing, because when it's a flexible, you're like, this person's getting the funds no matter what. With an all or nothing, it's everybody coming together and like you feel like you're part of it, and when it happens, it's just like it's a great feeling for the contributors as well as the creators.
Okay, so I really like what you just said there, Chris, this notion that what you're actually doing with that type of campaign is building a community, right? What you're doing is you're getting people to say, I'm in this with you, and so I want to help you get to your goal too, which is, to me, the power of crowdfunding, but you got to find a good way to do that. So it sounds like this all or nothing campaign is a big part of that.
Absolutely, on the bigger campaigns. And another thing that happens that I see with all or nothing campaigns is that like once that campaign creator hits halfway, like, you know, there's no turning back. They want to, you know, get to the 100% because they're like, oh my gosh, you know, I got this far, we need to hit 100%. And your contributors, you know, they're going to help you, you know. You need to leverage, you know, the power of those relationships, because those people went out of their day, you know, contributed to something that's not even, you know, existent, you know, maybe yet, you know, maybe it's just a rough prototype. So those are your supporters, and you have to really, you know, reach out to those supporters, thank them, you know, treat them like gold, you know, and help them promote, you know. I've seen it all the time, you know, when campaigns are getting really close, like they'll reach out to all their current supporters, and those supporters will, you know, help them get to that 100%. Yeah. So it's definitely like there is just like completely different feel to a bigger all or nothing campaign versus flexible.
Well, and if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to back up just a couple of steps to what Gail was mentioning, and you know, saying that there was kind of some rules that were on Kickstarter, and from what little I understand about all the different crowdfunding sites, that they all can have different rules. So if you know what Kickstarter says you can't do, maybe you could do on Headfunder or some of the other ones. So could you kind of, you know, is that true? Is that a true assumption, and that's why you kind of want to look at multiple different ones?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you want to definitely look at pricing for crowdfunding platforms. We have the lowest pricing in the industry right now at 2% for all or nothing. Kickstarter is doing 5%. Another thing you want to look at, you know, is it available in your country? Especially, you know, if you're international, some platforms can only be used by certain countries. Definitely want to look at, like, you know, the support, you know, see if it's good support. Like Kickstarter is focused on a niche of just creative projects, and so they don't accept a lot of different things. You know, well, our platform doesn't have any niche. We've never niched. So we already have 33 categories, you know, personal needs, for causes, for nonprofits. So it really depends on your category, you know, how much you care about the pricing. You know, I don't think the platform matters too much. Like, you can get a massive boost if you go on the, like, Kickstarter or something and you do get on the homepage. Like, you can get that major boost, but you know, most of them there's thousands of campaigns, so you're not going to get necessarily that traffic boost you're looking for, you know, unless you start trending and really sticking out. So but yeah, just, you know, look around, do your research, do your homework. There's lots of different options out there. You know, certain people like platforms for different reasons. So One benefit of our platform is, we're trying to make it more of a social network, where, every single user on our site right now can communicate with each other, which you can't do on a lot of the platforms. Because I feel like one of the major reasons we're making Headfunder that way is because I feel that the crowd is, what makes things happen, and they need to be able to communicate with each other. So we're focusing on very open communication where you can follow and message people with our site. So every site is different. So like I said, just, do your homework, research. Yeah, that's my answer. Sorry, I kind of blabbed a little, but I hope it was a good answer, and I hope it helps people make the right choice.
I think that's a great answer. I think oftentimes what happens with entrepreneurs, and not necessarily just with crowdfunding, but with anything, we can get kind of hung up on what's the hot new thing, and so you hear a lot about certain different platforms and whatnot, and you think that's the one I need to be on, without really doing a whole lot of, or really even understanding everything. And again, not just crowdfunding, but, that happens a lot, even with social medias. For example, everybody thinks for a long time everyone thought you had to be on Facebook or, and we've now come to find out that that's not true, that there are other avenues that may be more appropriate for what it is that you're trying to do. So I think your answer was great, and I really hope, I'm looking forward to seeing the success of your group. I think the opportunity to do pretty much anything you would want to fund without those limitations, I think that's a huge thing. We looked into it for a project we were working on once, and then, after we figured out pretty quickly that Kickstarter wasn't the right one for us, just said, we'll move on to something else. And in hindsight, that probably wasn't the right move to make. We figured it out some other kind of way, but to know that there are other options out there, I think, is an important thing for people to understand. So real quickly, though, we're just a little bit past halfway through the show. I did want to just remind everybody you are watching Show Me the Money with Carmen Rojas and Miss Stephanie Sims. Today's topic is crowdfunding with Mr. Chris LaBonty, the co-founder of Headfunder. There we go. and Miss Gail Harris, one of our lovely friends here on Google Plus, who has successfully used Kickstarter to fund a book that is forthcoming, and we're so looking forward to seeing her authorship star continue to rise. So we are just a little bit past the halfway mark, and so I wanted just to stop real quick and make sure that we do that. Oh, and to thank once again Mr. Dennis Deuce for our lovely screens, for our lovely overlays. That's what they're called. There we go, the overlays. He's incredibly talented, so if any of you out there are looking for help with your overlays or with any of the technical aspects of your HOAs, he is an excellent person to call. We give him 2 thumbs up. So so hopefully he's watching, and we'll take that into account there. Okie dokie. So back to crowdfunding. You mentioned that, and actually let me ask Gail a question. Were there any surprises, good or bad? Things that maybe it surprised you. I wonder, did it surprise you how much work it took? Was that something maybe that you knew going into it that it was going to be a whole lot of work, or did it surprise you?
For our level of campaign, it seemed pretty realistic to what I thought it was going to be. But I think the surprises for us were really just how people really came through. I mean, it was really amazing. I mean, Brandy and I, we were determined to make this work, and we were determined to hire this publicist. As a matter of fact, we hired her even before we did the campaign. We just knew one way or the other we were going to make this work. But I think that our devotion and motivation, and like we were saying before, putting all that time into the video and making it really poignant, and like making people care about the topic and care about the book, I think it really helped a lot. And you never know where like a good success was going to come. Like with us, this was really amazing, but like we had 2 days left, and we were almost there, but we weren't quite there. I mean, we had maybe like, I don't know, like maybe $7,000 more to go or something, and we were even thrilled that we had earned that much, because we weren't reaching out to a wide universe here. It was basically people we know, but we were starting to get a little antsy at that time. And actually, my husband, he saved the day because he was actually at a meeting with his company. They were at one of their quarterly meetings, and they have this thing in his company where during these quarterly meetings, employees can get up and they do this like up close and personal, where they just share a little bit about themselves and, you know, their family and their hobbies and all this sort of stuff. And my husband got up there, and he's obviously was very committed to this project because he's been hearing me talk about it for 5 years. I mean, I spent about 2.5 years writing the book, and then we went in and out of different contracts with publishers and looking for a publisher. We actually got out of the contract with a publisher while we were doing this Kickstarter.com campaign, which was really stressful, and that's another thing. But anyway, it was really nerve-wracking. So my husband got up, and he made this just like this beautiful presentation of the story and what the book was about, and the owner of the company was just so moved by the story. Right then and there, he donated $5,000 to the project, and that put us over the top. I mean, that did it. Now, that was a shock. I mean, so you just never know, you know, you just never know. And then other people that donated more money than we thought that they would, it was, you have to put your heart into it and do the best you can, and you just never know what's going to happen, really.
That's a wonderful story. And you know, I'm going to do just my marketing soapbox for just a quick second. And I think one of the things that entrepreneurs often don't do is talk about themselves enough. They don't tell the story enough. And you think, oh my God, I know my story. I sound vain. I sound needy. I sound, you know, like I don't want to talk about me as much. It's my product. It's my whatever, you know, but they just don't talk enough. And I think that's a tremendous example of what happens when you talk more. And when your story gets told over and over and over and over, and you know, at the point at which you are sick of it is often the point at which people are actually hearing it. So you know, being able to tell the story repeatedly and have the story be told and evangelized in the case of your husband is one thing that entrepreneurs often who don't get off to the best start, you know, who fall short in a lot of different areas, fail to do, and that's talk about their project and their dreams and what they're trying to do enough. So, soapbox over. That's it.
Yeah, and just to reiterate on that, I think that that's very important to include in your campaign video as well, you know, to kind of include your past. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. I can't hear Stephanie, sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's very important to include that in your video, to share your past and your story. You know, it really adds that personal touch. So, and that really is an awesome story, Gail. And that's quite a big donation. So, congrats.
Yeah, it was, you know, one other thing about telling the story. So Brandy and I each did our own separate videos, and the story, as I mentioned at first, it's actually Brandy's memoir. And the story, I mean, it will really just blow you away when you hear the story itself. So she spent time talking about her story, and so what I talked about was basically my experience writing this book, like how incredible it was for me. I mean, I could write a book about writing this book, and basically that's what my video was about, and I think that appealed to people as well. They were both very personal, and you know, putting both angles together, it really worked well, telling our personal stories.
Well, and can you hear me now, Carmen? Can you hear me? Okay.
And we're still having a little trouble hearing Stephanie. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's trick. I don't know. The Googleverse is not being nice to Stephanie today.
Yeah.
Well, keep working on it, Stephanie, but we can't hear you. But if you have to, you'll have to type it, and we'll get your question in.
You know, and life happens along the way with anything, right? Life goes. I think I mentioned this before, right? We were in the middle of doing our Kickstarter.com campaign, and I had written all this content on the page. We have we have a great publisher, and the book is going to be published in October. And in reality, what was happening while the campaign was going, we were in the process of getting out of the contract with our publisher. So we're talking to attorneys and, making sure that, what the contract, that everything would work out okay. And that was like, ooh, I mean, that was really stressful. And, we didn't really know what was going to happen because people were donating based on certain criterion that we told them. And again, these were people that really cared about us, so it was more of a personal kind of thing. So we were okay, but you never know what's going to happen. It turns out that so we got out of the contract with that publisher while the campaign was going, and then we were successful. So we had our publicist, and we were working with her, and now here it was, right? And we didn't have a publisher. And then just to sort of just fill you in on what happened, we looked into self-publishing for a while, and self-publishing is great, but for our particular purposes, we didn't want to do that with this book. And then it turns out that at the end of the summer, we actually ended up getting an offer from 2 different publishers. One was actually the Chicken Soup for the Soul publisher, and we ended up not going with them. We ended up going with a publisher called Ben Bella Books, and they're a smaller size publisher, but they do have 10 New York Times bestsellers. And we just like they seem to have a very progressive approach toward publishing with all the changes they were going through. And he really loved the manuscript, and he said basically that he loved the manuscript and he had to publish this book. But he also said that it was the Kickstarter campaign that really made a huge difference to him. I think that really clenched it for him. He was very impressed with the campaign, and I think it really signaled to him how serious we were about our promotion. So I think that in our experiences, I think that the Kickstarter campaign, it really put us on the map. It made such a huge difference. I mean, it gave us credibility, it gave us visibility, and of course we were successful, so we did, earn the funds. It helped a lot.
That's great. One question I wanted to ask you, Gail, and I guess this would also apply to Chris as well. So what I think I'm hearing is that you want to crowdfund something that you're passionate about, and I think also that you're passionate about, and then that you feel confident you can arouse passion in other people about. I might be very passionate about my left foot, but that doesn't mean anything to anybody. But if I'm a vet that's lost my left foot in battle or something like that, then that's a different story. You know what I mean? And there's passion behind that and all of that. Gail, take it.
Well, just to agree, yes, I think that the passion, I think that's a key ingredient. I'm sure that Chris would agree with me that you have to do all the strategizing and you have to think about everything financially, but if you don't have the passion, don't bother. You have to really believe in this. I mean, we were not going to give up. This was going to happen one way or the other, and that went a long way. It went into all our videos and just all the content that I had written for the page, and also the email blast. It was very heartfelt, and it was it was like my mission.
Yeah, I think being passionate about a campaign definitely speaks volume, and you're way more likely to get contributions. If you're not passionate about your campaign, then people aren't going to be passionate about contributing to you. So you really need to show people that you're passionate. If you want to have a successful campaign.
Okay, I'm gonna try one more time. Carmen, can you hear me?
Sorry, Stephanie, we're still having trouble, hon. I don't know what the deal is. Oh goodness! What can you do but laugh? Because that's just how it is sometimes. But I really do think, like you said, having passion is important. And one thing that I was writing a blog earlier about, I haven't put it out there yet, but just your own your mindset in your business and how that comes through in your objectives and what you go out there to set. So, not only just being passionate, but like Gail said, it was her mission, and she knew she was going to be successful. And I think that makes the difference between begging for money and fundraising. Begging, I think, the key difference there is you're uncertain of the outcome. When you're fundraising, you know what the outcome is going to be. So you're going out there trying to fulfill the outcome rather than to go out and beg, so to speak. You know, and that comes across in, I'm sure, in the way being an author, you were able to write well, so that your passion came through in the writing. So maybe, I guess, a good question would be, if you are not, say you're a crowdfunding because you're a plumber and you need, you know, the new set of wrenches or something like that. But you're not a writer and you're not talented at being able to convey emotion in that kind of a format. Would you recommend, either one of you, that you hire somebody to maybe write or manage your campaign?
Of course. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, you know, I think it's definitely good to have, you know, someone on your team, on your campaign, and maybe somebody who has, you know, crowdfunding experience or helping, you know, crowdfunding campaigns. You know, I would just, you know, heavily do your due diligence, because there is a lot of people in the crowdfunding industry that are charging, you know, ridiculous amounts of money and really not, you know, getting much done for the actual creator. You know, so definitely, if you're going to go down that route, you know, look at what the person's, you know, done in the past, you know, and if they haven't done anything in the past, you know, make sure they can show you, you know, what they can do, you know, so.
Go ahead, Gail.
Yeah, I would say again, I'm not an expert by any means in crowdfunding, but I would say I don't know if you need a person that's, you know, that has an expertise in crowdfunding. I'm sure that would help, but I think you need a good writer. I think you need to work with somebody that can elicit the story from you, a promotional writer. I think you need a promotional writer. You know, I was a copywriter for many years before I became an author, so I know how to write promotional copy. So I was able to pull that off. So I think, you know, if you get a writer that can write promotional copy, that can elicit in you, you know, pull out of you your passion and then get it down on the page, I think that should do the trick.
That's cool. Well, we're down to about the last 10 minutes, and so just in wrapping up, Stephanie, let's try. Do you have a voice now?
Can you hear me?
Nope. Still don't hear you.
I hear her very, very low.
Could you check your volume, Stephanie? Because I feel like maybe I hear you that you're trying, but...
Yeah, I hear her a little bit.
I can't control the volume. You have to control it.
No.
Oh, I heard it, but you can't hear it. It's like,
Yeah, I don't hear you. Oh, goodness. I'm sorry, Stephanie. It's just not cooperating with you. But let's, you know, kind of start wrapping it up. Any, you know, closing thoughts? You know, what have we not touched on, Chris, that you think people need to know about you, about crowdfunding, about Headfunder?
well, one thing we didn't talk about, I don't even know if you know, we have another platform as well, called HeadTalker. And basically what HeadTalker is, and it's getting super popular in the crowdfunding industry. It's a free platform to help people promote, and they can promote their crowdfunding campaigns. Crowdfunding is actually our most popular category on HeadTalker. The way HeadTalker works, it's like crowdfunding, but there's no money. So instead of you pledging money, people pledge their social media reach instead. So you could set up, like say you're crowdfunding, you could set up a message on HeadTalker with your crowdfunding link, and then gather all your current supporters, gather all the people who didn't have money to contribute, and ask them to add their social media reach to your campaign. And HeadTalker basically works like all or nothing crowdfunding. So if you hit your certain amount of supporter goals, the message on every single person's account who joined the HeadTalker campaign shares all at one time. So like say you get 100 supporters to share on August 30th your crowdfunding message, then it hits August 30th, all 100 people share it on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Tumblr, or whatever account they chose, and it all shares it all at once. So it can really create that viral boom you need, because too often people post messages on social media, and they kind of get lost, or they get a few likes, they get a few retweets, and they don't really go anywhere. But when you have like 100 people all post something at once, it really captures people's attention, you know. So it's an awesome tool to use for crowdfunders. It's fairly new. there's a few other people doing it, but we're the only company in the world that's giving everything out for free. While these other companies are charging to use the features, we're giving for free. So it's definitely a great way to promote your campaign. And there's a lot of people who don't have money to contribute. So you can be like, hey, if you don't have money, can you join this? And so they're like adding their social media reach, which is, definitely worth something. So I just wanted to share that because I think it's very useful for crowdfunding campaigns. That's
brilliant. That is really, really intuitive and very, very smart. Wow. But I just think that is really, really cool. And I think that'll help make you guys stand out from the competition in that space, is that they can do that. That's an awesome differentiator. And you make some very, very good points, of being able to leverage your social media, not just yours, but those of the other people that support you. That really is brilliant. Hand clap for Chris. That's a really great idea. And I'm sorry for, now Gail, now what do you got? Top that.
I can't. Well, I'll speak about my book for a moment, since I've been speaking about it for a while. I wanted to mention that the name of the book is Finding Zoe, and you may think, well, it's about a deaf person. Who cares? But it's a story that really blows you away. I've had a really great experience. Now the launch is actually happening on October 7th, and people on Google Plus are now really stepping up to support me in all sorts of different ways. It's really been great. Some people have actually been reading the book and writing a review, and I actually got an email this morning from Cheryl Deuce, who had done so, and she told me that the story was amazing and the book was riveting. So that was really great feedback for me. We've had people endorse the book, but we haven't really had any readers yet until this point. So I just want to say again, it's Finding Zoe. It'll be launching on October 7th. It'll be in the stores and online, and it's really, it really cuts through. It shows how it really talks about love, and how love comes in many shapes and forms and disguises. It shows how blaming other people is a complete waste of time, and it also shows how what seems horrible up close can be beautiful from a distance. So thanks, I just wanted to share that, and it's Finding Zoe, a deaf woman's story of identity, love, and adoption. And it's been great being on the show. I really appreciate sharing my Kickstarter story about the book.
No problem. I'm so grateful to both of you for coming on. And Gail, please make sure put links out in the event page, and we'll make sure that those get distributed and anywhere else that the show is. So if they want to find the book, if I know you've completed your Kickstarter campaign, but anything else that they can do to help support you and your cause, I think that would be an excellent thing to do. So please, yeah, links and all of that, and people go out and get her book.
Thank you.
And I don't know if Stephanie has anything else she wants to add. What about now? Anything? Yeah, I can't read lips that well. I think she said I do, but it won't let her. So we're just gonna say sorry, Stephanie, but she will put her comments out in the thread. I'm in the event room, so I apologize for the technical difficulty that Stephanie's having. But just for those of you who are fans of the show and enjoying the series, make sure that you let us know that you're having fun. We are putting together, the transcript of this show with all the timestamps and all of the links and everything into a downloadable format, so that if you missed the show but you want to get, the details of how crowdfunding works, as was shared by Chris and given wonderful examples too by Gail, we'll be putting that together for you. So just make sure you leave us a note in the comments in the event room. Just say, send me the book. And while it's not technically a book like Gail's book, but just say send it to me, and we'll make sure that we get you a copy of it. And make sure you mark your calendar. Join us next week. Like we said, we will be talking about credit and debt, and understanding when and how and if to use them in your business and as an entrepreneur. And our fourth week, we will be talking about venture capital, and being joined by Mr. T.K. Kugler, who is a venture capitalist here in the New England area. And I'm sorry, I know Stephanie has some guests coming up next week. I apologize, I don't have their names in front of me, but she'll post those in the event stream as well. So, Terry Robinson, there it is. Thank you, Stephanie. Terry Robinson will be joining us to talk next week about credit and debt. So, thank you so much for watching the show. Make sure you share this with your friends, and we're done for today. Thank you so much.